Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Mike Financial Education. Today, we're going to talk about 3 lessons from the book, The Most Important Thing. Lesson 1. Fish in the right pond. In order to succeed in any field in life, we need to know where to invest our resources. The book refers to this from a business perspective, but we'll also look at it from a different perspective. So, let's start with the business perspective. When you open a business, one of the most important things you need to do is check the market, or in our case, check the pond. Think about 2 business options. One is opening a pizzeria in a city that has 10 pizzerias, or opening the only sushi restaurant in the city. First, you need to check if there are fish in the pond, meaning whether you have customers. If the pond is empty of fish, meaning there's no demand for sushi, then it's better not to open the business. On the other hand, if there's a pond with fish and no one is fishing in it, meaning there are no businesses competing for customers, this means your business should work very well, as long as you're not bad. If we look at the pizza business, we can see that maybe there are more fish in the pond, but the competition with 10 other pizzerias causes everyone to cut profits. So entering such a market is simply a huge risk that you probably won't profit from. Therefore, in this case, the clear pond is the sushi business because it has no competition. Now let's look at this from a perspective that relates to employees. Think, for example, about 2 people starting their academic studies. One of them chooses a profession that has a surplus of workers in the market. Let's say in this case, we'll choose law. Although I must note that I don't know if there's a surplus in this profession, and the second person chooses a profession that has a great shortage in the market, such as dermatology. The person who chose a profession considered a pond crowded with fish will have to fight for their job. This is expressed very significantly at the beginning of the journey, especially in their first job. They must fight for every position just to get a chance to advance, because there are tons of people in the field competing for the job, and it's likely that some of them have work experience that you don't have yet, so the employer will usually prefer them. You can see this situation today in many professions where people without at least 2 to 3 years of work experience simply can't find jobs. In addition, that person's ability to excel among tens of thousands of competitors is simply zero. In contrast, the doctor not only doesn't fight for a job, but there's also a good chance that employers are fighting for them to work for them. In addition, their chance to excel in a field with very few people is good. So, remember that choosing the pond is one of the things that will determine your chances of advancing and succeeding down the road. The ability to understand supply and demand is key to success in business and in the employment world as an employee. Lesson 2. Play not to lose. According to the book, at the beginning of your financial journey, especially in investments, you must play it safe and minimize your risks as much as possible. This point is based on Warren Buffett's first rule, who is considered one of the most famous and best investors in the world. His rule says that in order to succeed in investments, the first and most important thing is to make sure you don't lose money. In order for you to understand how significant this rule is, let's look at an example. Think about 2 people who currently have equity of $400,000 invested in the capital market. One invests using the don't lose method and invests in index funds. Let's say, for example, that he invests in S&P 500 and the second invests in the first year in individual stocks out of a desire to beat the market. And after a painful 7% loss in the first year, he starts investing exactly like the first person. The first person invests an initial amount of $400,000 for 30 years at an average return of 8% and reaches an amount of $4 million. In contrast, the second person started his investment with a 7% loss. So he has $372,000 that he invests for 29 years, because we need to remember that the first year wasn't in an index fund. So out of 30 years, he invested 29 years in the S&P 500. The second person will reach a total of $3,475,000 after 30 years. This means that the loss of $28,000 at the beginning caused him to lose a cumulative total of just over $500,000. The more time we give our investors to invest, the more we'll see that the amount he potentially lost will only grow. If we look at a 40-year investment, the loss would be about $1.2 million. Therefore, it's very important to make sure you don't lose money, especially at the beginning. Lesson 3. Don't follow the herd. According to the book, one of the biggest financial disasters you can create for yourself is following the herd in investments. Most people in the world invest based on emotions, not from an organized system based on data and risk-profit calculations. This is why most people in the world are not a good example of correct investment behavior. Usually, people who think that the market is going to crash sell their stocks in panic. And this is what creates a mass herd that sells stocks at very cheap prices. A person who knows how to look from a smart financial point of view understands that this is actually an opportunity and not a problem. On the other side of the coin, many people buy stocks when they see that a certain company's stocks are rising, so they buy at an expensive price. According to herd logic, you buy when stocks are expensive and sell when they cheap, which is exactly the recipe for financial losses. In addition, there's an amazing statistic that made me understand the power of passive investment in index funds. According to a study conducted, it was found that the most profitable investment portfolios are investment portfolios of people who died. How does this make sense? Because dead people don't move money based on emotions, and this is why their account is completely passive, which in the long term helps them to make a lot of money. Summary. The book has 3 lessons that will help you succeed financially. The first lesson is to fish in the right pond. Choosing correctly a market to compete in is the key to success. The second lesson is play not to lose. In investments, you need to be careful not to lose money, especially when it comes to the beginning of the journey, because a few $1,000s at the beginning can accumulate to a loss of hundreds of thousands of dollars. And even more, the third lesson is don't follow the herd. Doing what everyone does in the investment field is a guaranteed recipe for financial disaster. I really hope you enjoyed this episode, and of course, we'll meet in the upcoming episodes as well.